Okay.
Let's talk shop.
Okay. Yes. So, working title, this is Talk Shop, our video game workshop podcast where we talk about various game design topics, game development topics, and generally just kind of talk about games. So, I'm Charlie Mackin, and this is my co host.
I'm Dennis Ramirez.
And you can find us on Patreon, Video Game Workshop, soon. By the time that this airs, it'll be out. And we're going to go through a couple different topics. Dennis doesn't know the topic for today that well. I just told him right before this. So the topic for today is hint systems and
So
all the
you hinted at it.
Yes, I hinted at it. So all the different types of hint systems, what makes a hint system good.
I mean, in terms of general vibe, I have a very love-hate relationship with hint systems because I'm the type of player that I'm like, I want to solve this puzzle. Like, especially if I'm invested or if it's interesting, if it's got hooks and stuff, I want to be able to say like, just give me some time. Like, let me mull this over. I like thinking about it for a while and then coming back to it within reason. And I think that that's another thing that we might talk about, like how long is reasonable for it before it just becomes like a hindrance. But it also depends on like how annoying or intrusive the hint system is, because you definitely don't want it to be something like, hey, you messed that up like 3 times, man. Like, you okay? Here's a hint.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a big thing with hint systems is that they can feel condescending. I think that talking about the point of hint systems really changes the way that they feel and how condescending they are. There's a big difference between a hint system that is there to help you if you need it and you opt into it versus a hint system that automatically turns on because you've been working on something for too long, or that even can like give you something that you didn't ask for because they want you to get to something else. Even if it's the exact same content, even if it's giving you the exact same hint, whether it's opt-in or not, can make a really big difference, especially for players like us and like you, especially Dennis, who take a lot of pride in being able to figure something out or do something yourself. I think that the opt-in is a little bit more your speed. But I know that having that hint system be just in time and give you just exactly what you needed when you needed it can also feel really good. So I think a lot of that is genre specific.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I would say I'm definitely solidly in the camp of I don't really like when hit systems introduce themselves or do it without my input. I can see why. Like, I think generally you want the hint system to continue the play of the game, right? Like, to me, that's what it's there for. That's kind of what you want it for, both as a player and as a developer. The last thing that you want is to have someone feel stuck, say that they'll get back to it, and then never come back to it again. And I can understand why like some hint systems, they have grades, right? Like where this is the initial sort of push of, have you thought about this or have you tried this, to a more forceful like, go to the door now, or something that basically gives it away. And it's interesting because I'm not sure that this is exactly the same as a hint system. It's more of a help system, but it has the same sort of idea behind it. I remember playing Mario, and I've already complained about this to you before, but there was a level that I was kind of stuck at because I was trying to get all the coins. I was trying to be a perfectionist, and I kept dying. And it was just kind of like, hey, here's a super mushroom. And the super mushroom lets you clear the entire stage without getting any damage, completely invincible. Just get to the end. It's very, very clear what it's there for, right? It's like, let's get you to the next level. And I took that personally.
Yeah, I think that it does start to feel like we're just going to give this to you because we know that you can't, right? Like there's like a
Right.
level of like can't. And
Yep.
it's not about helping you get better at it, and it's not about helping you figure it out. It's about getting you through it, which, to be honest, especially on things like a platformer, I might appreciate that more than you do, because maybe I just don't want to sit there and like get good for an hour and figure that out. It's like I said, it's genre specific because it's like, is there something that I can figure out and make myself better at? Do I not understand that if I like hit a button at a certain time, I will jump twice as high? Or is it literally that I just can't get the timing right and I just don't want to spend all sorts of time getting that timing right? Like you said, it's a slight difference between a hint system and a help system. If you're playing a game where you're learning something new in combat and it's like they pause the game, they tell you how to parry, and then they have you practice it 2 or 3 times, whatever, like if that pops up when you like are kind of losing very badly, it's helpful. It's a help system. It's kind of a hint, whatever. But also it can feel very condescending and bad. And there's plenty of games where like that doesn't happen, but they do have like a practice mode or an area where you can practice to get better at it. It's a little bit harder when it's not as just in time like that, Vic, when it comes to things that are more puzzly, more like there is a right answer and you either know it or don't know it. It's not as easy to get those in between things, and it's not as much about practice as it is just figuring it out, which can make it
Yeah.
feel even worse in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And like you said, I totally understand why you would want to put in a hint system like this. Like, you want people to get to the next level. Like, game design is hard enough without trying to make it a one size fits all for everyone that's going to play your game. There's definitely some stages. I'm thinking back to like the original Donkey Kong Country where some of those barrel stages sucked. And I knew that the save point was like after that. And it's not that I couldn't finish it. I got what the level was supposed to do. I understood it. And I didn't even have enough like drive to say like I'm going to beat that level. I wanted to finish the game, so I beat it. But if I could have skipped it, that would have been great. It probably would have made the whole experience way better for me. And I get that like more modern games kind of try and do that too. It's just that line of like when they introduce themselves and kind of say like, hey, you need help, or how they do it. Another sort of part of the help and hint system too is just kind of an admission from like the developer and the player, probably through playtesting, right, that something didn't stick. Like, there's some sort of friction here, and there either wasn't enough time to go back and polish that so that people didn't need that hint, or just the fact that like through playtesting, like you're not going to get 100% pass rates on anything that you do. And so you want to introduce something for every single puzzle, just as a way to help the player out and make sure that they experience more of the game rather than just like rage quit or putting it down and being like, I can't do this.
Right. If you had 100% pass rate on something, it would suck, right?
Hmm.
Like it would mean that it
Yeah.
was so ridiculously easy and like not fun at all that it would suck. People would hate it. So getting to the point where it's like a game without friction is not fun. We need to
Yeah.
have friction, but friction is not going to be the same for everybody. Like you can have the exact same thing and it's going to cause a lot of different reactions across all sorts of different players. And I think that admitting that that's true and having something there to help people who are at different levels is necessary. It's smart. It's nice. It's like it's not admitting you should have done something different or it is too hard, because like there are going to be people who like no matter how hard it is, they're going to want it to be harder. And it might be, that top 1% of your audience who like plays more than anyone else, but they are still going to want it. And there's nothing wrong with making that content. It's just kind of coming down to as a developer being honest with yourself about like, do I want them to get this or do I want them to play?
Yeah.
Like at what point are you just deciding that like maybe they won't totally get this on their own? Maybe they might even feel a little condescended to, but I don't care because I want them to play and I want them to have fun. Like I don't
Right.
want to be totally negative on everything because like a lot of hint systems for one are really good. And for two, like I'm a fan in general because I'm a fan of like anything that lets people play the game instead of sitting there stewing on it for whatever reason.
Yeah, there's a couple things in there too. And one of them is going back to that like completion rate. It's funny how many people, and I say this with hindsight, I know that I was there, especially at the beginning, but I think like there's so many people out there who think that the goal of producing something is to have 100% completion. And I think they get really shocked when they actually see some of the industry statistics about some of these games. One study that I saw looked at Steam. Steam trophies, basically, of like, did you buy the game? Did you get the completion trophy? Because almost every single game has a completion trophy, right? And they found something like it was like 10% or something really, really small. And I'm not even talking like platinum. I'm not talking 100%. I'm talking like roll credits once. It's funny how low that percentage is. I remember that Hitman, right? Like we've talked about this one, had like a 60% like completion rate or something like that. And you definitely want it to go up because you want people to experience your game, you want them to play it. But assuming that they're going to do 100% is just kind of ridiculous. But it's also something that you have to let go of after practice, I think. We've definitely worked with people who either have never made a game or that's kind of not their field. And they kind of want to aim for that 100%. And they push for that 100%. And like you said, when you remove all that friction, what you're left with is something that isn't kind of worth your time. It doesn't respect you as a player because it's like, oh, yeah, we're going to 100% beat it, but it's going to be done in such a way that you don't even really have to actively participate in it. And that's a danger zone, too.
Right. There is this gap between I want people to all play this game and 100% complete it. And so you have a game that's very frictionless and easy and short. Like the best way to get a game that everybody will complete would be to make a game where you turn it on and then it ends, right? And like the stuff in between that, like the easier it is, the less you do. Maybe like if you had like a 5-minute visual novel where you just read it by pressing one button, I think that that would have a very high completion rate versus like a game that is crazy difficult or has really difficult puzzles within it or anything has twitch mechanics that are crazy. The more you add in between there, the less you're going to get completion. It's not a bad thing. It's just that it's going to add that friction across players at different amounts, and that friction is your game, right? Like you want it
Yeah.
to be there. But I think that what hint systems are trying to do is kind of be the intermediary where it allows you to have the friction while also bringing up that chance of completion so people don't leave, right? Like they're hitting the friction that you want them to hit, they're playing the game that you want them to play, but when there's an easy exit or there's something that would maybe make them put it down or switch to something else, that hint system is just there to make it a little bit easier to just get rid of some of that friction in the moment without spoiling the game. I think that's the overall goal. How successful that is totally depends on the hint system, and I have my own opinions on what I think would makes it most successful, but I do think that that's the goal, and I do think it is kind of a noble goal as a game designer.
Yeah.
I think hint systems used to be a lot more prevalent, and they've kind of fallen off as the internet has become its own hint system.
I think you touched on a really good point in terms of how hint systems and like player guides and all that sort of stuff used to be like way more common than they are now. I mean, they're online, there's walkthroughs, there's all that sort of stuff. But I think at the core of it, it's that there's so much competition out there now. And you kind of have to put your ego aside as a designer and be like, okay, so this is a very clever puzzle. And yes, we've seen in playtesting that people feel like genius galaxy brains sort of when they solve it. But you have to weigh that against whether they're going to finish it or not because there's so many things on people's backlogs and so many things about like this is the next cool game that's out there that are competing for attention where it used to be like that was way less frequent. There wasn't a digital storefront, there wasn't any sort of thing like this. And so like if you had a game, you were kind of a captive audience for it, right? Where you were going to play through it. Like the original Myst, I think, is maybe a good example of this. I love the original Myst, but I've wondered if it was released today, how many people would actually like play through it, reach the end, be okay with it. Part of the reason I think why it was so impressive and popular at the time is because people sat with it and mulled it over way longer than I think we do right now for other games.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think another part of, hint systems and strategy guides and stuff that goes on now, they're trying to reduce this like friction and trying to keep you going. And I do think that there didn't used to be as much help online as there currently is, good and bad. I love finding an online community that's all talking about the same thing that I am struggling with. I think that there's something to like not being able to figure something out, and instead of finding the answer in a guide or finding it through a hint, going online and seeing 500 other people talking about how hard it was, that makes you feel really good. So I'm not against that online part. I like it. But
Mhm.
I do think that it's hard because you can easily spoil something for yourself, or you actually have to leave the screen that you're on and go to another screen, which is a point where it's easy for you to leave the game and not come
Yeah.
back to it. For, I guess, for lack of a better term, diegetic hint systems, that are part of the game that they're in, are kind of cool, especially if they like fit within the theme of the game. Like there's hint systems that are community made outside on the internet. There's hint systems that are made like by the developer themselves but live outside of the game, like on a website. There's hint systems in the game that are literally just a big question mark button and then they give you a hint and it's just you, the player, receiving the hint. And then it's hint systems where it's like it's in the game and the character who you are playing as has received that hint, right? So it's like there's kind of four different types in my head, I guess, that I consider like who is getting the hint, where is the hint coming from? Like, is the player getting it or is the character getting it? Like, together, are we figuring this out? And of course, it's very genre specific. It depends on like, did I figure out how to beat this boss from out here versus did I figure out how to solve this puzzle from out here? It's very different depending. I do think that the in-game systems have something really fun that feels more like I'm not getting outside help because it was in the game, right? Like it feels a little bit more earned, even if I literally hit a button that tells me go to the red door. It still feels more earned than it would if I went online and saw a comment that said go to the red door, right? And maybe that's not exactly fair, but it is a feeling because I saw it on the same screen as the game. I don't know. Do you feel that way as well?
I totally do. I mentioned earlier that I think like Professor Layton pops up as one of the good hint systems out there, and I think it's in part because of everything that you said. But more than that, I think it also gives you like a lot of player agency in terms of how you go about getting those hints, right? I think it was brilliant that for anyone who hasn't played the Professor Layton series, you have an in-game currency which you can collect after like solving puzzles. And I think they give you like a few coins at the beginning to use, and hints inside of the game cost coins. And you can get multiple hints, but every time that you go back and get a hint, you spend some coins. And after you finish some puzzles, you get some of those coins back. Sometimes you get some of the coins in the overworld too by just kind of like pixel clicking across the screen and doing a bunch of little things like that, which I think is really cool. What a good feedback system of more immersion and drawing attention to the different parts of the game, where then you have a very valuable currency that progresses you through the game. And then again, that's another part of it because it feels earned, right? Like you're not just getting that hint system and you're not just getting it for free. You had to work for those hints. And so it feels fair, like you said. It's part of a built in system, it's part of the in game economy. They expected you to do this. And not only that, not everybody gets the same hints. So you can go ahead and kind of choose how you move through the space and what difficulty you want to run at. If you really want to be a perfectionist and not take any hints, you have that ability. But at any point, you can be like, okay, I'm going to spend a hint and I'm going to spend some money. And you have to make an interesting design choice about spending that money. It's not just something that's available for free. I love hint systems like that. I think that they are fair. I think that they have their own sort of unique system and structure to it. And I wish more games would do that. But I understand that, like, let's be real, a lot of hint systems are kind of done at the end. They're usually like a beta plus sort of edition, right? Where yeah, alpha's never going to go well. You're going to go into the playtest, you're going to see the really rough edges. But then like by beta, you should have tried to address some of those things, and if you're like, "Oh no, people are still not going through this." You got to do something about it. Voila, the hint system, there it goes. And that's usually why you don't see the economy or you don't see like the hint system integrated as well as it would be in other places.
Totally. That's what I was talking about, that kind of like diegetic in-world system where it's like you are earning these coins and then you have to choose to spend them on these hints. And so it doesn't feel like you're getting something unfairly. It feels like you earned it. That's totally true. I will say the last time that I played Professor Layton, I think I must have been like 12 or 13 or something on my DS. I do remember like going online and seeing what the hint for one coin would be on a puzzle. And like, if it was like a good hint that like I needed, I'd be like, oh, okay. And then I would like, that was worth it. That was worth it. And then I'll go spend the coin because I felt like I needed it and I
Yeah.
earned it. But
Yeah.
if the hint was like a bad hint, where it was like it didn't give me any information that I didn't already have, I'd be like, I'm not spending my coin on that. And so that was definitely cheating. I was younger, but like still, it's just so interesting because not only does it make it feel more earned, but it's also like giving you this very slight friction, very slight disincentive to getting a hint, right? Like it doesn't
Yep.
feel bad to get a hint. It doesn't feel like you're cheating or you're going online and getting the answer, but it does have enough friction that it's like, I don't want to just get all the hints for all of the puzzles immediately, right? I think that if there was a button that you could hit in the game that just gave you as many hints as you wanted for absolutely nothing, and like you just kept hitting it until you got the answer, there is a certain level of drop off where you do it enough times that it becomes so normal that you don't care anymore. And then you're
Yeah.
basically just being a completionist going through the motions of playing the game without actually trying yourself. It's not a personality thing, it's not a failing, it's just kind of a psychological fact. You start
Yep.
getting used to getting that information for free and it doesn't feel bad anymore. And then you just get used to it and suddenly you're not playing the game, which I think is, you know, what we talked about, where it's like the game is the friction. The
Hmm.
hint system is there to kind of help you with the friction when you need it while keeping the integrity of the game. And I do feel like hint systems that don't cost anything, cost being relative, do kind of get rid of that. They get rid of the integrity of the game in a certain way. And it's like, I'm not a get good person, do whatever you want to do to play the game. I want you to have fun. But are you having fun at a certain level with hit systems that don't cost anything, that don't feel a little bit like you're spending something, like not feel bad, but feel like a cost, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, on that same note, in terms of it being active, I think how it pairs with the theme is also kind of important in that. Again, going back to like the Professor Layton series, he's your typical Sherlock Holmes sort of person, right? So having the system be active, having you have to think about how to use the hint system is very much in theme with that. It feels earned and it feels active. Where if it were passive and free, it would feel almost like a sort of like divine intervention. You're playing as Leighton, but he's getting like these hints from like the ether, right? Like he's not working for it versus the one that's a little bit more active. Like we even see it in Sherlock Holmes novels where he has his network of like informants and he spends money to get information, right? Like it's very much in theme with who you're trying to be in there. Like we kind of said earlier, hint systems are very different depending on what genre of game you're also playing, right? And the theming as well. So I understand, like, if you had a more concrete puzzle game, why an in-game economy might not work for that, but I do still think that you have to have some sort of friction associated with it, or at the very least a cooldown, so that it's not just an immediate thing that you do that you would be silly not to do because it's a tool, it's available for you, and it's intended to be used. Even having a cooldown or having some sort of currency associated with it at least lets you attempt it once before you look at the additional sort of hints and help that's associated with it.
Right.
And sometimes it surprises you, right? Because sometimes you attempt it and you get it and then you're like, ha, I didn't even need that hint.
Right. It's interesting. It's like we're talking about adding friction back into the thing that's there to help take away friction, right? But it's like it's
Just
not
a little bit.
exactly the same. It's like we're transforming the friction into something else, right? Like
Yeah.
the thing that's causing the friction is no longer the puzzle or the fight or whatever. Now the friction is this trade-off, this cost, which, like you said, could be a currency thing, could be a time thing, a timeout thing, could be anything that like feels like it's a cost or like it's a friction. You're just trading it, right? It's like we don't want to take it away, we want to trade it, which I think is a cool way to think about, like, if you're trying to keep the integrity of the game, taking away all difficulty or taking away all friction doesn't work, but trading it for a different kind does, in kind of like a mean spirited way, maybe a little bit, but I do think that it makes the game much better.
I got a really bad, a really hot take from this, just thinking through and just kind of thinking about like what we've been talking about right here about how, agency and choosing how you spend things and all that. It just reminds me of that really bad EA Reddit comment that's like, we like microtransactions because we feel it enhances the game and gives the player agency over how they'd like to play the game. And for a moment there, I was like, oh my God, it's almost the same thing, almost the same thing. But, it's one, again, it's that diegetic sort of thing. Like saying it's exactly the same as the system in Professor Layton on surface level is kind of accurate. Like you have some sort of currency, you spend it, and it makes it easier and you can play it in a certain way. That's almost the same as like spending something on a microtransaction that will give you a power up or will give you like some sort of loot that you otherwise would have to grind for, and it makes it a little bit easier. But at the same time, the idea that you earned it by playing the game, by actually being in the world and being in the theme, is the key difference there, right? Versus bringing in your workday basically to help you finish the game. That's completely disjointed and feels really bad compared to the other one.
No, you're
You can
right.
still do it without being scummy.
Yeah, if you wanted to make the argument, that a hint system is taking away in-game friction and, transforming it into a different kind of friction to uphold like the game, that argument would be, we're taking away the friction of like having to play all these levels with the friction of needing to make money in corporate America, right? Like it
Yeah.
would be like I am
Right.
working real hours in an office so that I don't have to do this, which is not diegetic, is not ethical, but like I can understand your
Yeah.
devil's advocate argument there. Like, I don't think it's good, but I can see how you could call it, some sort of like hint system with a currency level.
I
Very
mean, if
funny.
EA ever makes a detective game, you know that that's going to happen. It's like get the Sherlock Holmes pack, get the inspiration pack. Gross.
I was just gonna say, I think that another important part of genre with hint systems and like when they're used, like how you would use them in game is, again, this, if you're trying to reduce friction within that game or transform that friction within that game in that moment, why? Like I think we've talked about, you're trying to keep people playing, right?
Hmm.
If the point of your hint system is that you want people to continue playing even when they hit a friction point that is too much for them, you want to give them another option. I do think that there's a lot of games nowadays that already have the other option, right? Like, I think open world games or games that have a lot of different play modes or different things have definitely contributed to this feeling that we have where like in game hints aren't as big of a thing anymore. And I think that if you're playing a game where you are in a dungeon and there's nothing for you to do other than complete that dungeon, or if you're playing a puzzle and you either win the level or you don't, having a hint system is very important, because if you don't, people will leave. Like,
Hmm.
if you want them to continue playing, they're stuck and you don't want them to be stuck. But I mean, let's think about like Breath of the Wild, or Tears of the Kingdom. If you get to a shrine and it's a puzzle and you cannot figure it out for the life of you and you keep dying, you don't necessarily need an in-game hint system to keep you playing,
Right.
because there's 1,000 other things that you can go do and come back to that
Yeah.
later. I'm not saying you don't need an in-game hint system because you'll never figure it out without Googling it, or because you would rather have an in-game hint system than go online and figure it out. That's a separate thing. But if the goal is to keep you playing, those games already have so many things that keep you playing that if that's what their goal is, they don't need it. So I think that that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up Zelda because I was actually just thinking about like Another Zelda game. I was thinking about the Ocarina of Time and their adaptive help system, which has been infamous, right? Like it's Navi, it's the hey, listen, like over and over and over again. I recently read an interview where Miyamoto kind of talked about like Navi and how they designed Navi for this specifically and how difficult it was because right now we've been kind of talking about hint systems that are kind of embedded within a puzzle. You kind of know like what's going on with it. You can cater it to a player or to that specific puzzle, that sort of deal, right? But like in an open world game like The Legend of Zelda, especially the Ocarina of Time, which was one of the first ones to kind of do this, you don't have that context. You don't really know where the player is going to be. And it was very bold of them to be like, yeah, we're going to take a crack at like this adaptive help system that tries to give you information based off of what we see in the world and where you are. Because it became very apparent very quickly that you weren't going to get a lot of the context of like, when was the last time that you played this? Was it yesterday? Was it an hour ago? Was it a month ago? And how quickly do we reset these hints? Like you said about your comparison to like Breath of the Wild and having like the individual puzzles as like shrines is interesting too because in the Ocarina of Time, famously, the water temple was really, really hard to get through. It caused so many people to just put down the game and never get back to it. It was actually still one of the developers' deepest regrets. It was not communicated well enough to the player that people could finish it in a reasonable way. Again, reasonable because you don't want it to be super, super easy. But this one was considered so hard that people just did not continue it and they never got to see the end. And that's, you don't want to be there. So, you know, with their hint system of like Navi has the context of like which room you're in, what things you're seeing, what you're locking onto. And you can kind of use that to your advantage. But with something as ambitious as like the water temple, where you have to increase the water level, decrease the water level, go back and forth and up and down, you need to have the hint system also be aware of the wider context. And at least at that time, that wasn't available. Even now, it would be kind of difficult. They basically could only make sure that they knew what you were looking at and where you were and give you the context for that hint. And so it fell apart there. So even if they did have a hint system of like, hey, that rock looks suspicious or whatever, that's not going to help you if you already beat that dungeon room and are backtracking through it because you're like, yeah, Navi, I know it's suspicious. We already dealt with it. I need to know how to get to the fourth floor.
I remember playing those games. Me and my brother were very little, and I had the strategy guide up while he was playing and was like helping and going through with my very low at the time reading level and trying to figure out what we were supposed to do, and we had a blast. And I think a lot of that just came from, for us, the game friction and fun came from trying to actually physically do the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and like getting through that level. And so like having that guide next to us telling us what to do wasn't getting in our way because we were already
Right.
having a difficult time and having fun with that. But if you feel like you need to be able to figure that out on your own and you're not, and you're getting all of these hints from an annoying fairy that's telling you things that you already know, it's really difficult because not everyone gets stuck on the same parts. Not everybody hears a hint the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going to click for someone in one way that doesn't click for someone else. And it's impossible to make it work for everyone. You're never going to have any hints that like work for everybody. Even in our Professor Layton example that we both love, they have like 3 hints per puzzle and you buy one at a time and they get more and more explicit. Depending on the person, that first hint might make it click for them and they're like, oh, got it. And for other people, they could get all 3 hints and it's just not going to help. And there's really nothing that you can do about that. And I think that that's okay. And it's just about, playtesting and finding the best one that you can get and then kind of letting it go. And same thing goes for the player. Trying your best and getting hints and helping and wanting to get it works. But if at a certain point you aren't enjoying the game and like that's your exit point, that's okay. Like we said, that happens. People don't complete games, but also like no shame in just going and finding the answer or figuring it out or pressing that button that lets you auto complete the fight or getting the magic mushroom in Mario and just going
Right.
past it because like the point is to have fun and to play the game, right? No amount of hints online or otherwise are ever going to be perfect. There's no way to do it. And it's just kind of like whatever is going to make the most fun out of it.
Yeah. And I also think that we tend to be really hard on ourselves. And I'm guessing a lot of other designers and developers do too, because we're looking at it from like crafting the experience from other people. And we want it to be as good as it can be. But you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, it's kind of a conversation between like the developer and the designer and the player. And you, as the player, are choosing to do this experience. If it's not for you, then it's not for you. That's fine. If it's not for you and you're playing a game that you're not really into, it doesn't matter how good the hint system is. It's not going to keep you playing. At the same time, if you're really invested with seeing how it's going to finish or how it's going to end, then there's nothing wrong, like you said, with trying to find that information in other places because your goal is to play through the game and having a good time. And I don't think any designer would be like, hey, no, you're not doing it right. Actually, I see that pushback more from like peers of, hey, you're not doing it right, or you're not playing it right. And that's kind of funny, but in part it's, I think, because they have pride in having been able to solve the puzzle or do the thing. And so they want that to mean something, right? They want it to mean something outside of the game. So when you see someone else like cheese a boss that you spent hours on, you're like, I don't know how to deal with that. I'm really proud of myself, but at the same time, that was 3 hours.
Yeah. That's me when I watch like 9-year-olds playing, or like even like younger, even like 7-year. I think we were at like an event once together and we saw like a 7-year-old with a Switch playing Breath of the Wild, and he was like just killing it. Like he was just so much better at that game than I am.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. But yeah.
100%. To kind of recap, and some of the takeaways here, I think that we can agree on are hint systems are good. Hint systems are kind of necessary to keep the momentum going, to keep people engaged, to help people along, because at the end of the day, you're working together to have a positive experience or to have this experience, to share this experience. But there are definitely things that you can do, I think, to make it feel a little more fair, maybe a little more earned, or be a part of the experience instead of feeling like this meta sort of component that you feel like you were forced to add. You can make it thematic. You can try and add a little bit of friction that makes sense with the game that you're wanting to use it for. And then ultimately, you have to keep in mind that the end of the goal is to get to the next cool part and to keep that retention. So you can't let your design ego get in the way of that. And as a player, you also have the agency to be like, this is cool, this is clever. I don't need to engage with it because I want to see what's next.
Totally. A lot of these topics will come up in some of our other topics later. I think, like when we're talking about puzzly games, thinky games, all sorts of things in the future, this will definitely come up.
Fun stuff.
If you like listening to this episode about hid systems, our Patreon Video Game Workshop is going to have a lot more of these episodes about different design topics. Let us know what you're interested in hearing, and you can find us online on our Patreon, on our website, and on our Blue Sky account at Video Game Workshop.